leathery wings, scaly body, razor-sharp teeth, deadly claws. A gallant knight on the hero's quest slays the monstrous beast and rescues the princess. The fire-breathing dragon is no more. The creatures that hide in our skies have been spotted for millennia. Were the legends just written for storybooks? Is it really coincidence that ancient artists on opposite sides of the globe all depicted dragons? What secrets have our textbooks on dinosaurs entirely left out? Maybe intentionally. From the historical to the spiritual, from good dragons to evil, this is an exploration of epic proportions into the mysterious world of dragons. So come, journey forth with us, Knights of Wonder, and explore the tales of the cryptids on Episode 1, Dragons.
Welcome to Edge of Wonder. We're your hosts. I'm Sir Robalot.
And I am Sir Benjamin Chastain. Sir Rob and I just returned from a dragon hunt. Unfortunately, Rob lost an arm.
'Tis but a scratch.
But a scratch. It's no big deal. You have your other arm.
That's all right, Sir Ben. I've still got my other.
Barkeep, another round of ale for my companion and me.
Oh. The magic of television.
Back to normal clothes. So, why are dragons such a popular part of pop culture? Why are so many people fascinated by them? They are a part of many cultures in different ways, and they are a part of many, many stories.
We've all heard the stories of the knight slaying the dragon to rescue a princess. And there are fantasy tales like The Hobbit, which has, the major final conflict of the story involving a dragon.
There's also Harry Potter, which has dragons in a lot of scenes.
Yeah, but who even considers Harry Potter movies, really?
Maybe. And that gives the story so much more interest. And what would Game of Thrones have been without the depth that the dragon gave to that story?
Dragons have been a part of all of our lives in one way or another. I mean, everyone knows what dragons are, at least a little bit. But what if dragons aren't as mythical as we think?
What if what we think we know about dinosaurs isn't based on fact, but science filling a gap? Well, this episode will be focused on exploring this fun rabbit hole.
Where did the word dragon even come from? It seems to be derived from the Latin word Draco, meaning serpent or giant serpent monster. Or did dragon come from the Draco constellation? If so, did cultures all around the world, from all different time periods, see it as well?
Some seem to think that the word dragon is a blanket term to describe different categories of monstrous creatures. In fact, did you know that dinosaurs were called dragons until it was changed in 1842 by an evolutionist?
Not only that, but a lot of what we think we know about dinosaurs is actually wrong. Stay tuned because we'll get into all of that a bit later in this episode. But how far back can we go to find the use of the word dragon? We can start by exploring maybe our most popular ancient text, the Bible.
Dragons are mentioned in the Bible quite a few times. However, its text has been translated many times over. Now, we don't know for sure what the original text said when referring to dragons.
Now, it is possible that a lot of Bible passages are meant to be taken metaphorically, so we are keeping that in mind. Still, though, it is interesting that the word dragon is used. So people already had to have the understanding of what a dragon is. Where did this understanding come from?
The Bible is a complicated document.
You think?
Maybe one of the most complicated documents in existence. But let's explore this and see what we can discover. Psalm 74 verse 13 states, quote, "Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters."
Ezekiel 29 verse 3 states, "Speak and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh king of Egypt, The great dragon that layeth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself.
There are a lot of other references to sea monsters, or some kind of dragon-like monster, or perhaps serpents that lie in a river or a body of water. This doesn't necessarily mean a literal dragon, although there are differing opinions about this. At the very least, it is a representation of something evil.
The book of Revelation speaks of a horrible beast emerging from the sea and a dragon giving it great power and authority. But perhaps the most revealing statements in the Bible regarding dragons are passages from Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Isaiah.
They all speak of a fiery serpent, and Isaiah speaks more specifically of a fiery flying serpent.
That sounds like a dragon to me, Ben, but are these supposed to mean literal dragons, or is this just a representation of something evil? Or perhaps it's just to represent some kind of destructive event.
Numbers actually speaks of fiery serpents descending upon Israel, and many Israelites were killed. Does this mean that dragons descended upon Israel like Daenerys Targaryen destroying King's Landing? Or does it just mean some type of destruction? But what do you guys think?
Babylon is mentioned quite a bit in the Bible. It's pretty much the place where much of the evil we know today supposedly manifested, and with dragons in the West being seen as evil creatures, were there dragons in Babylon is the question.
The Ishtar Gate was the 8th entrance into the inner city of Babylon. It was built to honor Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. It was built on the order of King Nebuchadnezzar II. Now, on this gate sat 3 animals. One was the dragon of Marduk. Marduk, or Baal, was a Babylonian god and was represented by a bird / lion / dragon, serpent, hydra thing, whatever you want to say.
What didn't he represent?
Yeah. Another interesting thing to point out about this creature is that it's covered in reptilian dragon-like scales.
King Nebuchadnezzar II supposedly said, quote, I placed depictions of wild bulls and ferocious dragons in the gateways and thus adorned them with luxurious splendor so that people might gaze on them and wonder, unquote.
Tiamat, a Babylonian goddess, was often depicted as a dragon queen too. You know, in the popular game Dungeons & Dragons, Tiamat was depicted not only as a queen, but also the mother of dragons.
So were dragons real in Babylon? Let's look at the story of Bel and the dragon. This is where it gets weird.
It is said that the book of Daniel in the Bible is incomplete and that a Greek edition was made that tells the story of Daniel refusing to worship the god Bel, or Baal, and killing the dragon.
The story of Bel and the dragon tells this continued story of the prophet Daniel, and in that same place there was a great dragon which they of Babylon worshipped. And the king said unto Daniel, Wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living God, therefore worship him. Then said Daniel unto the king, I will worship the Lord my God, for he is the living God.
It continued, But give me leave, O king, and I shall slay this dragon without sword or staff. The king said, I give thee leave. Then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair, and did seethe them together, and made lumps thereof. This he put in the dragon's mouth, and so the dragon burst in sunder. And Daniel said, Lo, these are the gods ye worship.
Dude, he made bombs.
He basically made a bomb, it
He
sounds
was like, that dude
Yeah.
is gonna breathe fire. I'll just make whatever is inside of him explode.
That's actually what
Brilliant.
it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
It seems from what we found at this point that the word dragon has just been another word for serpent, but where do these legends of flying, fiery serpents come from? Why not just call them serpents or snakes? Why the word dragon?
Have the legends of dragons just been exaggerated by artists over time, or could it be possible that dragons like the ones we're describing were actually real? Sir Ben here again. We just completed yet another dragon quest. Unfortunately, Sir Rob lost yet another arm.
But I got a question here. How come you never get injured on these quests, Sir Ben? And like, I have an excuse. I went noodling out there like a proper redneck. What were you doing? Why do you have my weapon?
Were you fishing with sharks?
Frickin' dragon!
You went noodling with a dragon? Well, that's because I am brave and strong, and I defeated the dragon with my bare hands. I don't even have a sword, yet you have Thor's hammer, and you still lost both your arms.
Well, to be honest, none of this seems very fair to me, and I'm just gonna have to bite my own enemies from now on. So, speaking of dragon slaying, let's talk about the story of St. George and the Dragon Slayer.
Oh, I can drink to that, Sir Rob. The tale of St. George goes like this. There was a dragon that guarded a city's water supply. So sacrifices such as animals were offered to the dragon to gain access to the water. And actually, there's many stories in the East that deal with very similar things.
When this was no longer an option, children were then sacrificed to the beasts. But when a princess was chosen as the next offering, St. George arrived to save her and slay the dragon.
This may be where the popular "the knight saving the princess from the dragon" trope comes from. We've seen this play out in a lot of movies and stories throughout history.
It was even made fun of in the movie Shrek.
You didn't slay the dragon?
It's on my to-do list.
With all this referencing in fiction, what if there's more to it? A Bible expert actually thinks that dragons may have coexisted with man, and he thinks the story of St. George might really be true.
He used biblical accounts as well as Roman accounts to prove his theory. Tom Meyer, who is a professor of Bible studies at Shasta Bible College, said that it just can't be a coincidence that dragons were mentioned in the Bible so many times, as well as in so many different cultures, and all throughout different time periods nonetheless.
Hey, woman, man.
Yeah.
Professor Meyer said, quote, long before the time of St. George, numerous sources referenced the existence of different kinds of dragons, unquote. The Roman statesman Marcus Tullius Cicero wrote about flying serpents from the Libyan desert. Then, hundreds of years after Cicero, a Roman historian by the name of Ammianus Marcellius wrote about winged armies of snakes.
Yeah.
What could those be?
Seriously. Then there was the account of a Roman soldier named Regulus. When fighting a battle against Carthage, a dragon reportedly appeared behind Regulus's soldiers. The soldiers killed the dragon on Regulus's order and sent the dragon hide to the Roman Senate as proof.
Is the tale of St. George and the accounts of Roman historians just stories that have been exaggerated over time? Or is there truth to them? There are accounts of dragons in so many different cultures stretched over different time periods.
Let's look at more stories of dragons of Western culture. It seems that dragons in Western culture usually perform deeds of destruction or represent evil that lurks over a town or city. In The Hobbit, Smaug is a dragon who hoards treasures and then comes out to destroy the nearby town.
It seems that dragons are the villains in many stories in the West. In Norse mythology, there's a story of Thor fighting a dragon creature named Jormungandr. Awesome name.
Seriously.
This was shown in the movie Thor Ragnarok.
You know, the actual Norse legend was a lot different from what was shown in the movie. The legend goes that Thor was fishing with his giant friend Heimer. Heimer reminded Thor that Jormungandr lived in the waters they were fishing in.
But instead of leaving, of course, Thor fished for Jormungandr instead to lure him out. Then Thor fought and defeated the dragon serpent creature because that's what Thor does. He just fights things because he can, and he should.
Yeah. Anyway, here we have another dragon-like sea monster. One interesting thing about this story was that Jormungandr was a monster that lived on Midgard. That was the name for Earth in the Norse mythology. So, were they saying there are dragons on Earth?
Another interesting thing we found was how Thor would die according to Norse legend. To finish the story, Thor killed the dragon and then succumbed to the venom that was spewed on him while fighting, which is a little bit surprising to me because you'd think he'd get bit and then the venom would turn into like Chuck Norris or something like that. I mean, because Thor,
It's
right?
Thor, right. Anyway, well, Vikings also used a ship that resembled a dragon called Drakkar, or dragon ship. Drakkar ships even had dragon heads mounted on them to ward off sea monsters and evil spirits.
Where else do we see dragons in mythology and history? In Greek mythology, a dragon was slain by Apollo, one of Zeus's sons, using a bow and arrow. Zeus also defeated a dragon named Typhon with a thunderbolt.
There's also the epic story of Jason and the Argonauts. In the story, the heroes were looking for a golden fleece that was being guarded by a dragon.
One of the most famous stories of Western culture involving a dragon is Beowulf. In this story, a dragon ravaged a city where Beowulf happened to be king. Beowulf then vowed to kill the dragon.
Which he did, but he also suffered fatal wounds, which is similar to how Thor suffered fatal wounds in his battle against a dragon.
Let's look at some Mesoamerican depictions of dragons. Quetzalcoatl, or the feathered serpent, was a mythical creature. It was common amongst the Aztec, Olmec, and Maya civilizations. Quetzalcoatl was believed to be the creator of mankind and a deity of the sky and agriculture.
There is a temple of the feathered spirit in Teotihuacan. On the outside of this temple, you can clearly see what looks like a dragon heads poking out of the walls. If you want to learn more about Quetzalcoatl, check out our Vlad the Impaler series. The Order of the Dragon and this evil dragon are all part of a weird culture.
Yeah, and there are also many artifacts and drawings in these cultures that show clear depictions of dragons. But some of these dragons are very similar to dragons in the East. How interesting is that? I mean, how could these two very different cultures in different time periods have dragons that are very similar to each other?
Not to mention all the other cultures we mentioned. But how similar are these dragons compared to the dragons in the East? And how are they different? The interesting thing is, like, the Maya and the Aztec they're more of the long dragons that we would see in Asian cultures. So it's kind of interesting.
It is.
Did they both see these creatures?
And I mean, and if you look at then the dragons that are in the Thai culture too, they start to look more like those down south.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, dragons in the East, we got to talk about those. Like we said, they're very similar artistic depictions of dragons from ancient Chinese cultures. The Han Dynasty, which lasted from 206 BC to 220 AD, the Tang Dynasty, 608 to 906 AD, and the Sung Dynasty, 1127 to 1279 AD, all had similar depictions of dragons in their art.
Somewhere in the course of time, dragons became a part of just about every culture on Earth during just about every time period. This is so fascinating. These legends had to come from somewhere. It is just too much of a coincidence that so many cultures have similar comparisons.
But there are major differences between dragons in Eastern culture and dragons in Western culture. Dragons in the East are more like what we see in Chinese celebrations, a long, slender, snake-like creature that glides through the air, you know, giving benevolence to anything it sees. Dragons in Asian culture are seen more as spiritual creatures as opposed to Western culture, where they're usually seen as symbols of evil that bring about death, destruction, fire, gold, anarchy, you name it.
Yeah, seriously. So let's get into some really interesting stuff. Traditionally, dragons in the East symbolize different types of powers, usually control over water, rainfall, typhoons, and floods. In fact, this is depicted in Journey of the West, which is all about the monk trying to get the
scriptures into China.
Yeah, and it has the Monkey King and all these different things. This falls in line with many other legends of serpents or dragon-like sea monsters in other cultures.
Chinese people believe that dragons are responsible for controlling the weather. They also seem to be a symbol of power, strength, and good luck. There are even temples that you can visit that were built to honor dragons. They believe that by honoring dragons, it will protect their agriculture.
Chinese emperors were said to be descended from dragons, and according to the Chinese zodiac, every 12 years, dragons are born in China.
On the Chinese zodiac, there are 12 different creatures. It's said that Chinese families will plan their pregnancies in order to have a child born during the year of the dragon. In fact, Bruce Lee was born during one of these years. Maybe that's why they called him the dragon.
That's probably why. Actually, it is very common for people living in China to believe that dragons were real. There are so many stories of people living there seeing dragons even.
Yeah, also many bones that have been found in China over the past few hundred years have been sold and turned into medicine. Many Chinese people believe these are the bones of dragons and have healing properties. The Washington Post had an article about this in 2007, but you don't want to read that trash.
Dragons are deeply embedded into Japanese culture as well. They play a big role in their creation story. According to Japanese legend, when the universe was created, it is believed that several deities came into existence.
They were known collectively as Kodo Amatsukami. And just like the Chinese dragons, Japanese dragons were associated with the sea. In Japan, they were water gods that actually fought with other gods. Now we can begin to see where the story of Godzilla comes from. And if you haven't seen old Japanese paintings of dragons, they're actually among my favorite in Asian culture.
They're very cool. Yeah, most people are familiar with Godzilla, the giant lizard monster that's
about to fight King Kong at the end of the month that I can't wait to see.
Yeah, but in the old days, it was always destroying Tokyo.
Yeah.
Well, except that it has no wings and cannot fly at all. But the dragons of the East typically did not have wings anyway, which is interesting, actually.
And then there's the name Godzilla. Dragons of Eastern culture were looked at as gods as well as protectors. Godzilla routinely emerged from the sea to fight other monsters, although this usually brought about a lot of destruction if you haven't watched one of those old Japanese movies. Very funny destruction, in fact.
Yeah, it was.
Ultimately, though, Godzilla was trying to protect people, according to the Japanese people. Godzilla!
Right, this is the same concept as the Avengers fighting aliens in New York, while also participating in destroying the city at the same time. So, I don't know. This is the interesting part.
All right. So through all of our research on this topic, this is probably the craziest thing we found that might be the best proof that dragons did in fact exist.
Before we get into this, let's take a deeper look at what we know about dinosaurs. Did you know that the term dinosaur, or actually Dinosauria, was only invented in the year 1842 by a man named Richard Owen, who just happened to be an evolutionist and a follower of Darwin?
That sounds kind of fishy. Before 1842, all dinosaurs were called, ready for it?
Dragons!
So why was the name changed? And what does the word dinosaur mean? Well, dinosaur means terrible, powerful, wondrous lizards. But what was the point of changing the name?
The first Tyrannosaurus rex was found in 1902 by Barnum Brown. However, the legs, arms, and some other bones were missing. Here's a clip explaining it.
Today, it's mounted here. Well, some of it is. Because they didn't find a full dinosaur in 1908. What they found was the skull, most of the tail, the rib cage, pelvis, and most of the vertebrae. But the rest of what you're seeing here, it's man-made. And that's true for most dinosaur exhibits.
Scientists actually made educated guesses to fill in the missing bone structures of the T-Rex. Also, because it was so big, they just assumed he must have been the king of all dinosaurs and a vicious predator.
Over time, however, this has been challenged. For example, what is the most important thing a predator needs to hunt? Eyesight and claws, right? Well, the T-Rex had none of these. Also, it was top-heavy. If it got into a fight and got knocked over, it would have had a really hard time getting up. T-Rex can't do push-ups, people.
No, instead of eyesight and claws, what the T-Rex did have was smell. A T-Rex could smell a dead animal from 25 miles away. So some paleontologists, such as John R. Horner, suggested that the T-Rex was actually a scavenger and not a predator.
If this is true, then it is important to ask, was Brown seeking the truth of what he found, or was he in it for the money and recognition? After all, who would come to see an ugly scavenger dinosaur compared to the king of all vicious beasts?
When the T-Rex was first displayed, the crowd lined up for blocks. So of course this narrative wouldn't ever change. Not only that, but why did scientists fill in what they think it looked like? But now that we're on the subject, what about other dinosaurs?
Some say the information we know today could completely change our understanding of what we think we know about dinosaurs and even mankind. For example, most dinosaurs actually had feathers. And if we think about the dragons in the East, they seem to have fur or feathers on them as well.
Also, many dinosaurs on display are real bones mixed with fake because they are actually missing from the complete skeleton.
You boneheads.
The first dinosaur ever publicly found in the West was in 1858 by Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences member William Folk. It was a nearly complete skeleton aside from the head. But why is this important?
The fact that it is missing the head means that it was cut off. The only living thing that could do this would be a human being. Not only that, but according to author Ben Armstrong, if this skeleton were found just a few years earlier, it would have been concluded that they were bones of a dragon. That's actually really incredible if you think about it.
There's also a dinosaur called, ready for this, Dracorex hogwartitza.
Come again?
Yeah,
That has to be fake.
I thought it was fake too. But it is called this because the head looks exactly like a dragon. Its name is Greek for Dragon King of Hogwarts.
What the bloody
Yeah.
heck?
And this is totally true. It was found in 2004 along with only 4 vertebrae. So nothing, no body at all. Basically just a little bit of vertebrae and the head. So the full skeleton that is on display is actually fake and created based on educated guesses.
Paleontologists say that this is from the Pachycephalosaurus family, but why don't we see anything else like this in paleontology or even in other Pachycephalosaurus, but whatever the thing it is? Why is it so hard for science to say, hey, this could be a dragon head?
So the Pachycephalosaurus ones are the ones that have the hard head on top, and they're saying this is a junior one of that, but it just doesn't exist anywhere else. The answer to this is more complex than even what we thought. It seems that changing the name from dragons to dinosaurs was deliberate. Darwin was pushing his theory of evolution, and religious people weren't buying it. In fact, in the 1800s, it was banned in schools and, of course, in all places of worship.
Author Ben Armstrong pointed out that if they called dinosaurs dragons, it would actually prove that the beasts in the Bible were real, and therefore the Bible itself was real, pushing out Darwin's theory even more. Therefore, they changed the name and even made an argument in favor of the natural selection process to disprove what the Bible taught and to make money in the process. You think we would call those the Cabalosaurus right there?
Yeah, seriously. Compulsories. Maybe we can say that. I don't know.
Seriously.
Well, we won't go any further on this topic since this is an episode about dragons, not dinosaurs.
Or Darwin.
Or Darwin. Even though we can now argue they are essentially one and the same. But we have been wanting to expose everything wrong with our understanding of dinosaurs one of these days, and even the theory of evolution, but not for now. Let's get back to dragons. So are dragons really part of our history? Do they still exist today? There's really no way for us to know for sure, but it certainly seems possible considering all the historical accounts, and in fact, many dragons still exist today.
And according to many historical accounts, it seems that man may have also existed alongside dragons. And if they were ever real, like the way we've described the accounts of them in this episode, what happened to them? Are dragons still around?
There are several theories to consider. One is that dragons may have existed in alternate dimensions or still do. Another is that dragons may still exist today, but are just not the same as they once were, sort of like how dinosaurs today are different from what they once were.
And now that we know dinosaurs are actually dragons, this changes our entire perspective and understanding of what we know about dinosaurs and even our own science. But no matter what, one thing is for sure, things are not as they seem. Our history seems to be much different from what we've been led to believe.
Yeah, like what if the pterodactyl, actually it's not the real head of the pterodactyl, that they put it on a different head and it actually, I mean, can you imagine if you had more of a pterodactyl that had a head of the dragon? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be essentially a flying dragon, right?
Really, the most dangerous dinosaur is the Cabalosaurus.
And ordinary media, I mean, it's like everybody knows that mostly what we see in the bones in museums and everything, it's like 90% of them are not real. It's like they either hide different things, they've made up stuff. So again, it's really hard to say, is this what this dinosaur looked like?
They always tell the story like they know, and this is exactly what they found and where and all of that stuff. But you weren't there. You didn't see those things.
Well, what do you guys think? Are dragon-like creatures such as the little-known Jersey Devil real? Well, stay tuned for the next installment of the Tales of the Cryptids to find out more about the winged beasts of legend. There's actually evidence that these things are real, so you guys won't believe what we found.
Sir No Arms a Lot here. Thank you for being with us on our extremely successful Dragon Quest. He's had a little too much meat, as you can tell.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Dragon Quests are so much more fun with faithful companions by your side. And although Sir Rob lost both his arms, he still has his wits, unfortunately.
Right. No bloody dragon is gonna get me down. Not now, not ever. And I may not be able to summon the same type of strength as Sir Ben here, but even though I've lost both of my arms, I can still kick and bite my way out of any trouble.
I would kind of like to see that.
Me too.
I'm not sure if I'm that confident as you are.
Well, we're about to take off on another no-limit adventure.
Yeah. So until next time, we will see you fellow Knights of Wonder out.
On the edge of no appendages.
But 'tis just a scratch anyway.
I like how on the script it says, which is actually just tucked inside. Like, in case I really did lose an arm in the filming of this. Anyway, back to the script.
No arms were harmed.
No arms were
during
harmed.
the making of this film. I feel like we should do that a little differently. I think we should just forget the script.
This doesn't really seem very fair to me, especially since Cindy only scrolls for you and not me. Oh, I gotta do my other arm now. Do I need to, like, keep both of my arms like this now? I do.
And although Sir lost arm a lot, both...
No, go down. Why do you keep... Wait. We gotta get some... We got some B-roll. This is me walking like an Egyptian. This is me doing a body lifting competition.
Would you like me to feed you?
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this episode.
If you want to watch the rest and get access to our full catalog of content with hundreds of videos that will keep you entertained for hours and hours, subscribe to rise.tv.
Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss a single new drop.
Yeah, and we'll see you out
On the edge.